So have you ever wondered why is it actually so hard to move a WordPress site? And I want to tackle this question first. You don't actually have to watch this particular video if you just want to dive into learning how to actually migrate WordPress websites. But I do feel like I need to add this explanation in for those of you who are curious about this, and also because I think sometimes when you understand some of the underlying reasons, it makes it a little easier to apply some of the instructions that I give you later on. It doesn't seem so abstract. There's a little bit more context as to why I'm telling you to do certain things. Why is it so hard to move WordPress sites? Static sites, okay, simple static sites, websites that are built just out of plain HTML and CSS files are really easy to move, right? And those are the first types of websites that I learned how to build back in the 90s. All you'd have to do is just take all the files that were in one place and then just move them or copy them, whatever you wanted, to the new place. So you could just, for example, if you could just upload all your HTML, CSS files to the server via FTP and you're good. Okay, test it out, make sure everything's working. That's great. Okay. Now, WordPress websites are more complicated. I remember when I first started using WordPress, I thought, oh, okay, I need to move my WordPress website. I'll just take all these files. I logged in and I saw all these files. They weren't HTML files. They were these weird files called PHP files. Didn't quite know what that was. And I saw all those files and I thought, okay, I can just move all those over to a new place. And that didn't work. And that is because of what WordPress is. WordPress is actually a type of software. WordPress is actually software that runs on your server, okay? And the software, and all those PHP files that you're actually seeing on your server, those are actually the program files that generate your WordPress website on the fly. Okay, it's kind of like this engine that's automatically generating all this HTML that web browsers are then viewing, okay, or then reading. I don't want to go into too much detail, but that's kind of a real, high level overview of that. WordPress actually needs a database to hold all your website data, all the information that goes into your website, all the content of all your posts and your pages and all that stuff. That all has to get stored somewhere. And believe it or not, you're not going to find that if you log into your server via FTP. You're not going to find any individual posts or pages listed there. All that stuff is stored in a database, and that's stored separately, okay? And there's some technical reasons for that are really outside the scope of this course. But one of the first things I learned when I started discovering how WordPress works is that WordPress is actually a combination of this software in conjunction with a database. And so the analogy that I like to use, okay, is I like to think of it as a car. I think of your entire website as like a car, and your WordPress website, the PHP files, okay, that are on your server, those are the program files. I think of them as sort of like the engine of your car. Okay, that's what's moving things forward. That's what's making everything happen. But I mentioned that WordPress needs a database to hold all of that data, and that's what I think of as the gas tank, okay? You have to have both of them together, and they both connect together to build an entire car. Now, it's not a perfect analogy, but that's the analogy I like to use with my students, and it's an analogy that works for me. Suffice it to say, you can't have one without the other, okay? Just the engine on its own without a gas tank, it's not going to go anywhere, obviously, the gas tank on its own without the engine to go with it isn't going to do anything. You need both of them together. If you try to move just those PHP files without that gas tank, without the database, it's just not going to work. You're not going to have your WordPress website. So you need to move both of those things. Now, moving the PHP files, that's actually pretty easy because you can move those files around just like you move any old files. But moving the database, that's actually kind of tricky. The database technology that's used most often is called MySQL, and it's great technology, but it's a little tricky to move those databases. You actually end up having to export things and then create a new database and import things in there. It's possible to do it manually. In fact, that's how I used to do it for years and years. Whenever I needed to migrate a WordPress website, once I realized how it needed to be done, I would actually manually migrate my WordPress websites. And it takes a lot of time to do this. And by time, I mean, like, once you get good at it, it's the type of thing that would take me a couple hours to migrate an entire website. And what I mean by that is like a couple hours of full concentration. It's not something you just do casually in the background. You really have to concentrate on doing everything in the right order and not messing up all the steps. And on top of that, there are all sorts of potential problems that could come along with that. There's all sorts of potential database import and export errors that could happen. You'd often get file path errors, particularly if you're moving from one domain name to another. There's permission errors, all sorts of weird things that can happen. And trust me, I've run into my fair share of that. And so while it is possible to do a manual migration of a WordPress website, I really don't recommend it. Okay, I don't know many people who actually recommend doing it that way. I recommend instead using a series of free tools to automate some of the most difficult parts of this process. There's some manual stuff we're going to do, and it's not beyond you to do this. But in combination with that, we're going to use some free tools. I'm going to tell you about some free tools that we can use to automate some of this process to make it as easy as possible. And this is now the migration process that I use whenever I am migrating WordPress websites, either for myself or for my clients. And so I hope that this will be very useful to you as well too. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. For ad-free versions of all my videos and other bonus content, check out my online courses at robobunny.attack.com. Thanks for watching.